Well, I really wanted to talk to you guys. Ultimately we want to help you design your property and design your hunt. And, Dylan started working with me in 2016. So it's been...
Time flies.
Yeah, it flies too fast, actually. It's been a while. And through that, then Dylan's gone to clients too. Now I've been to, I don't know what client, it'll be 1,700 clients this year in 26 states. And it's interesting, we were just talking, Dylan's been to 26 states too.
Yep. Well, we'll be here. So in another month, I'll be going to my 26th state. Pretty crazy.
Pretty awesome. Yeah. And about 300.
Yeah. Yeah. I think over 300 now. Yep.
Yeah, we talk about those numbers. And I would just point out for one that I don't even know if there's 10 people in the country that would go to 50 or more deer clients throughout the entire year, maybe 15.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a few.
There's not a lot.
Yeah,
and
not a lot.
Dylan's one, I'm one, Joe's one, and Kevin's one. And that's 4 of us that work for the same company, Whitetail Habitat Solutions.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about a little bit about, first why. But we love doing this.
Yeah, we do.
Dylan has fun. I mean, he's...
Oh, yeah.
We both enjoy, I think, our clients a little bit differently, but the same at the same time. We both enjoy going to parcels. We both enjoy the clients.
Get to see cool places and meet cool people.
Yeah.
And talk about deer.
Very much so. And I would say, how often do we have a dud of a client?
Very, very seldom.
We're talking 1 out of 70, 80,
Oh, yeah. There's
60,
very
100.
few days where it's like the day starts, you're like, I already can't wait to get out.
Yeah, this is
Usually
awkward.
It's like, this guy's cool. We're going to have a good day.
Oh, yeah.
And
they're all cool in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so,
definitely.
but anyways, we want to ultimately help you design your parcel. And so part of what we're talking about here, I want you to see, you can take back some of these features to your own parcel and what you can do with that. But it's not about just the habitat. And I think that's where this all goes sideways, is folks go to school to learn how to manage deer habitat.
Yeah.
And you find quickly that you can't you can't manage deer habitat by going to school.
A lot of it isn't always field applicable, right? Like you're learning one broad way to do something, but they throw different variables at you and you're just kind of bewildered almost, right?
I'm sure there's a class where you learn all about MFL, CRP crap in like government programs.
Yeah,
like government programs.
So.
And so you go out and if you work for a government agency, obviously you're going to push government programs. You're just going to think because you learned it in school, it's a good thing.
Right.
And it's great for landowners. How could it not be?
Yeah, I do think there's a new revolution almost. And, I have a good friend of mine now. He works for one of these programs, and he is very open to understanding our purpose behind what we do. And he understands that the program also limits that kind of creativity that we kind of bring to the table. So he's really open to working with landowners.
I would say that's the new generation.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is really cool because then that ultimately helps people more, which is all our goal. Now, Dylan, if someone asks you why should you hire a whitetail consultant, I have some very strong reasons for that, but what would you think?
I think it's a lot of times, it depends on the client, but a lot of it is thinking outside of the box, and a lot of it is not trying to go in the wrong direction. So a lot of people own a property, they buy it, and for 5 years, the hunting gets worse and worse and worse. And they're like, man, this place worked a lot better, and we saw a lot more deer before we even did anything out here.
Right. Yeah, and that's, and kind of along those lines, we bring a perspective that, together we've been to over 2,000 properties or right around there. Yeah. And when I say that, a lot of people think, 1,700 properties. Think about the years it takes and the number of clients you have to have per year. I've been doing this since 2005. That was my first season of whitetail clients. So I'm now in my 21st season going to whitetail properties. Yeah. All of those are by the day. Usually I'll go to 100 clients for me personally before I get out within 8 hours of getting to that client. So we're talking an average of 9 to 10 hours times 1,700 clients. These aren't just phone consultations, talking to someone, visiting someone, leaving 4 or 5 hours later. I've heard of clients, of consultants doing that.
I have heard
They're
that
gone
as
in
well.
4 hours.
Yeah, like, we did a lap around the property and that's it. It's like, oh man,
where there's
I want to
so
get in
much
there.
more. It's almost like the lap around the property isn't as important as all the other strategy that goes into place. I even tell clients that. But we bring a perspective to your property based on a level of experience that, quite frankly, you will never come close to having. And I'll repeat that. It's not just saying that.
That's not trying to brag. That's just, hey, we've seen it. We've done it. Different states. We've encountered most of the problems several times. Where it's like,
even on your own property.
Yeah.
Like you could have your own property for 20 years. We're going to be able to look at your property differently and more definitively and give you better solutions than you will after owning it 20 years.
Sure.
Because we're thinking outside the box. It's called diversity. It's what in a workplace. It's when you bring people from outside the workplace. I had a company, it was a hunting industry company, and I will say it was in the archery industry, and we'll just leave it at that because they're a very successful company and they've been around for a long time. And until another company came along that pushed the envelope for design and innovation, they were stuck in their success. And they said it was a really good thing. Now that company, not the company that I went to as a client, that I had as a client, but the other company that brought along the innovation, they've been sold and now they're going backwards. And so the company that's been around for a long time, my client company, they're doing better than ever. And it's because they said if that other company wouldn't have come along, they would have been stuck. They wouldn't have innovated, and they would not have the success that they do today. And that's no different than going to your property, you get stuck in the same mud. I almost don't want to see some of the stuff that they've done.
Sure. Yeah. How many clients are like, you got to see the chestnut trees I planted, or that kind of thing, where it's like, we got so much other stuff to worry about. Maybe we'll see that on our lap or whatever.
This is a really good deer trail.
Yes.
Well, when you redesign a property, deer trails are going to change on top of deer trails.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have cattle paths where you never even had a deer trail before.
Absolutely.
And so that's some of the whys, but meeting and hiring, building up.
Yeah.
We talked about this
right
before. What are some of the things that you would encourage folks to understand about?
Just hiring us? I think
the build up of,
I'd say fortunately, and again, like I don't want this to sound like we're boasting, but we're not really in a position where we need to sell ourselves, right? So it's not like I'm calling a potential client going, please hire me. Most of our clients are very eager to hire us. And then beforehand, we aren't really talking about the property until the day of. So we'll take a look at it. Usually we'll have the client send an aerial, and we'll have a few questions that we ask every client.
Via email or text?
Yep. And so I've had a couple clients make the comment of, wow, you guys really isolate yourselves or separate yourselves from the hiring process and the beforehand process.
We have a Jessie.
We have a Jessie who is incredible.
Family friend. In fact, she was in our wedding and her husband was in our wedding. So, family friend.
Great
and
gal. Yep.
She schedules everybody and she keeps us away from the riffraff, but she keeps us away from useless discussions that not only waste our time, but yours.
It's one of those things, like, we sound very callous when we say that, and it's not to be disrespectful. We just don't have time to talk with every client for 3 hours or 2 hours or even an hour beforehand. We're going to have those discussions the day of, when we're there, when it's hot, fresh in our mind, and we're looking at the aerial with a client. And really, if a person has time to discuss that with you, they probably aren't very busy, and they're not very busy for a reason. And it's probably because they're going to 20. We know well-known habitat consultants in the industry that go to 20, 30 a year. And you frankly just can't learn that much by going to, and I know some that are under 20. And they've been doing it a long time, so they have the appearance of having a lot of experience, but going to 15, 18 a year is not experience. They don't get to see a lot. And that kind of gets back to, we know how to look at things quickly because we've seen it all before. Oh yeah.
We follow a set of concepts that no one else manages with. It's a balances of how whitetails relate to each other and you. And we adhere to that, strict adherence. I talked about that with Joe, Kevin, Wes. That's why other people can do this within our Whitetail Habitat Solutions fold, because they strictly adhere to those concepts.
Definitely.
And it makes it a lot easier.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because you can basically look at, when Joe or Kevin send me their designs, it's very easy to see, yep, here's why you did this. This makes perfect sense. That's why we're accessing here. That's why the food is here. And that's why we're creating these layers of bedding. It's like, that checks every box for the concepts that we talk about.
And we have Wes. Wes is our full-time seed manager and for the seed company for Wildlife Blends. So he's out right up there at the pole building right now. He's working with my son Sam. My son Sam's here working for a little bit. And but Wes goes to clients. I think he'll go to 15 this year. I think he might have gone to 18 last year. Every one of his plans goes through Jen. Jen works with me every day. We work on the property every day. We work on the property in Wisconsin every day. We talk about seed questions all the time. Jen answers a lot of those. And so Jen is very competent. She could go to client properties very easily. Even though she's never been to one, I trust her wholly because she understands the concepts and can apply those.
Yep.
And so that hiring building up, people say, well, I want to talk to you. We don't have that time to talk to you.
Unfortunately,
And we have enough clients that want to hire us. We don't need to talk. We don't need to beg. And so that's a really good thing. I think it's a good thing anyways.
I think it's a good thing.
No, yeah. I'm talking about for the client.
Definitely. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things. And again, I don't want it to sound disrespectful. Believe me, we'd love to sit down and chat or drink a beer with you guys beforehand. We just don't have that kind of time, you know?
Yeah, and that's where Jesse comes into play.
Absolutely.
Her conversation to hire someone could border on minutes to an email. Where ours, I learned, I had one time, and I just remember in particular, it was in 2015 or 2012. 2012, I called 10 clients on a Saturday. I booked 8, and it took me 10 hours. So that was, I only could talk to 10 people, and I worked dark to dark, basically, on that day in early December to book, and that was my Saturday.
And that's losing a day at home with your family, and it's also losing a potential client day, right? So it's a two ways to look at that. For
Very
sure.
much so. We don't do telephone consultations because usually it's 2-hour consultation, hour of prep time, hour of follow-up, and it turns into a 3-hour call. That's 5 hours. We're turning away clients.
Not to mention the accuracy.
A full-time day.
You know, looking at something on an aerial, how many times do you get somewhere and you're like, this doesn't look anything like I pictured.
And then kind of the day. When we're meeting with the client in the morning, we sit down for coffee and breakfast, just a chat. That chat could be 2.5 hours. It could be an hour and a half. Could be an hour. It's rarely ever under an hour. I feel that by the time we go out on the parcel after that conversation, sitting down there, looking at maps together, looking at aerial photos on your phone and talking face to face, I feel better about going to that property, out onto that property. And we haven't set foot on the property. That's a good thing. Because there's more strategy that takes place in that conversation. There's more good direction that takes place and a scope for the day. And understanding with the client during that 2-hour period than we could ever cover on the phone in 3 or 4 hours. But I feel better going out on that property than I did.
You're almost let's say halfway there, where it's like, if all of this works, if we can actually do what we were thinking about doing in these spots, this is going to be a breeze. Because now it's just picking tree stands and talking about, you know.
You probably know too, you probably have learned what to talk about and what to not. When you're looking at their parcel, you could say, there's definitely going to be a food source here. That's 100% in our mind. Where in the past, we might look at, there's 100% a food plot over there, but man, this might be a hunting plot here. And if you put a hunting plot here, we can do this and put a water hole here. And then we get there and we find out that's not a good spot for a hunting plot. So that affects sort of, so
that
we learn to spend
then.
more time on this. And then we say, that's going to set up potential hunting plot and water hole over in this location.
Absolutely.
So we learn to be a little bit more vague in areas that we need to be vague. So we're not wasting time.
Absolutely.
And so that way when we go out, we're getting the big structure. It's kind of like you're coming in on your driveway. The garage has got to go here. That means the kitchen goes here. The dining room goes here. That means the living room's here. The 3 bedrooms are over here. Oh, you want to split master bedroom bath with the other bedroom. So that means it has to go over here behind the kitchen and garage. And there's where the upstairs is going to go. We've developed that structure.
Then we'll talk about the carpet and, all that little stuff. You know what I mean?
Talk about that first. And that's why those conversations ahead of the time before we get out there lead down all those paths of what the carpet looks like, what the trim is, where the TV's going, and it's totally inappropriate. It's wasting your time and ours. So the day we have that morning, and I often refer to that morning as where a lot of strategy takes place. Then we go out on the property. The property to me is more of this is what it looks like. It's more of a fact-finding mission.
Does it look like what we imagined it would, and what needs to change?
There's 11 puzzle pieces. We look at all the puzzle pieces. You want to see all the edges? We don't need to stand on a corner post. Because I'd rather stand in the property and look over and say, and we can look at our aerial and say in GPS dot and say, your northeast corner has got to be right over there about 100 yards. We don't need to spend our time walking and talking, going over there to look at the corner. I'd rather sit here and observe everything that's there, and be able to turn inward and be able to...
Because this is where the action's at, right?
We can relate everything. We can cover the land better. So when we're going around the property, it is what it is. It's kind of, this is this bedding area, this is this. And when we're out there, then we can actually say, this needs to hold more deer, and this is how we do it. And it doesn't matter if it's an open field, open hardwoods, or a thick, clear-cut area. This is what you do to improve this swamp.
Well, and there's always good illustrations out there, too, where, you have a big open hardwood, but then you see that there's a fallen tree somewhere, and you go over there and there's a ton more stems because of the canopy gap that it made. So it's really nice to show that kind of stuff.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, look at this tree that fell down. Imagine if you did this times 30 on your property.
Absolutely.
What's going to happen? Then when we're out there, we can actually say, this is where that hunting plot's going to go. This is where that big plot's going to go. That means on this big plot, you could put a hunting blind right here, but you can't get so close you're going to spook the deer off there. Now on this hunting plot, you'd put a stand in this tree.
Yes. Yep.
So we have people bring marking ribbon out.
I carry my own. I got 3 colors. I got my own color code, and go and mark them, and love it.
And so a lot of times we're talking specific trees for stand locations, but those stand locations, like I mentioned somewhere here, design first, stand second, they come after we know the structure of the design of the house or the parcel. That's kind of like your living room couch
or furniture
recliner is going to go here, but let's get the whole layout of the house and structure and the architecture first.
Yep.
And then we can look at it. And so then it does boil down in the field, and we'll even say, you want, like for a bedding area, I'd cut that tree down first, and then I'd cut this one, because they're smaller, and you're gonna have to hinge those. You'll complete cut this. It's gonna fall that way.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to another spot, and then they're kind of excited. They're kind of like, well, what would you do here? And I'm like, well, that's knoll right here. I wouldn't do the bedding area down here in the valley. I'd do it right up in this knoll.
Where they actually want to be.
And we can even say, like, that knoll there should be beds on in the snow, and then you go over there and they're like, how'd you know there'd be beds there? Well, that's just where they'd have to bed. That's where we look at beds a lot.
Oh yeah, love it.
So after we do all this, when we get back, it's some alone time in the truck. Now Dylan, I think, takes on average 15 minutes less than I do. But
I usually sit at the table or whatever alongside, and that's like, I don't have to be completely shut off, but I'm going to focus on this.
Where if I'm talking, the 3-hour drawing time that it would take if you're there turns into an hour and 15 minutes in the truck. So literally I've had clients tell other people at the table, stop talking to him because he needs to focus.
Let him
because
focus.
If I'm talking and have a conversation, I'm losing the focus of drawing out your plan, and so it's taking from your plan. And so I've learned through COVID to just sit in my truck and do my thing and bear down, and that to me gives you the most accurate plan. And but bottom line is, a lot of strategy that takes place in that morning meeting on the property is, let's look at it as fast as possible that we can absorb and talk about those features while we're absorbing it with you, so that when we go draw it out and we show the drawing, have you ever had someone say, wow, this isn't what I thought?
No, that's usually the first thing I say. I hope none of this surprises you.
Because then we did a bad job.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did a bad job teaching throughout the day. There will be 20% surprise, 10%, maybe a water hole in the spot.
I think like one of the, sometimes you'll be drawing it up. You're like, oh, this would work here. We didn't think about that while we were out there, but let's do a water hole here.
Positioning. Is one of the things.
Because a lot of it's, you're looking, okay, that's far enough from this other water source, and this will check a box as far as now they get out of bed on their way to this food source. We should have water there. So a lot
sometimes it'll be too, like there'll be a corner that I get back and I'm like, oh, they should create bedding in this corner because they don't have to walk by it. And it's the same bedding as this inside, so it's going to be shaded the same color. And so everything shaded orange will be doing this. Everything shaded brown is this. Everything shaded cream is this. Yellows.
We have our own keys.
And so then when we present that to the client, I actually email it. I text it first. Then I email it with them. So they have it by text email. That means I've sent it by Gmail. I have it in my phone then and my tablet that I drew it up on. So we have it many different ways. And then I sit down and I almost insist that they record it. And sometimes if there's 5 in a group, I ask, okay, which 2 of you want to record this? So there's always a backup. I don't know if I told you I got to one the other day. I tell people not to video it on their phones because when you record an hour, it's about 45 megabytes of voice recording. When you record a video that's an hour, it's like 35 gigabytes. A lot of phones hold 500.
You're filming at 4K probably at 60 frames a second or something. Just don't do that.
I had one the other day.
You can do that in addition to the recording.
I told him all this, gave him the spiel, great clients, and I saw that it was on a tripod, but I thought he was just recording it because it was out amongst us. I was there, actually projected the drawing up on a big screen TV. So I could go up and point to things, and we're all in a group. Kind of
awesome.
like, it was nice. I like when people do that. It was a nice setup. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, it stopped. And we were like just wrapping up. And I'm like, what do you mean stopped? He's like, I said, your voice recording, right? And he's like, no, I was videoing. And I'm like, oh no. So luckily he pulled it back up. It just cut out the last 7 minutes and it kept the video. But a lot of times that video's gone.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
And I've had it happen.
Oh yeah.
We used to record by SD card with a camera. I did, and then they lose the card. It get damaged some way, and all of a sudden it's gone. Where if you record it, you can email it.
Yep.
But in that recording, I know in this last trip I had one recording that was 2.5 hours.
Oh wow. Yeah,
it's a really long one.
You're a good yacker though.
I would say 45 minutes.
I would say
to
like
an hour and 15.
Yeah, I've had
around
some,
an hour.
I've had some where it's very short. It depends on the questions, and the discussion that takes place. My
And the
average is
client.
over an hour. Yeah,
The client, because there might be some clients that their food plots are beautiful. They have really good experience with a saw. They already have water holes out there. So we're not talking about you need to dig the water hole down this. This is a size. Food plots, we'll go right down with food plots. This is what you should plant. This is how you should do it.
When, chemicals, everything.
Yeah, timing, everything, right down. Because we want, when we leave, you have that recording. I literally had a client that it was an hour and 15-minute conversation. He had his office secretary type it up for him. It was 26 pages of type notes.
Awesome.
Hour and 15 minutes.
Cool. Yeah.
Now they have
like AI or something. Yeah. Yeah.
excuse me, where it can print out the document for you, and it's
that'd be
paragraphs
sweet.
and topics, and pretty cool what they have now. But
That's awesome.
bottom line, when we leave, that drawing is always the same day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we know of consultants that'll send it up to 6 months later, and that's bad.
Definitely.
Because it's not even clear to you or I. It's not even clear to you or I a week later, let alone 6 months or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's going to be the clearest that day. It's going to be the most precise that day. We keep the drawing, but I might not remember a year from now exactly what I told you to plant, because that's going to be based on your equipment, your food plots,
where you were,
that discussion,
absolutely.
your neighbors, what they're doing. So, but that drawing has to be that day. Where I run into problems is when they say, hey, can you redraw this? We based everything off this, and I think I want to do this. That's where I run into problems. Now we got to recreate almost the whole design and day. But we draw it up that same day, recording the same day, so when we leave, you're ready to go.
Absolutely.
And there shouldn't be any reason. We've been extremely thorough to the point where their head's spinning.
Yep.
And that's why that recording is so critical.
A lot of times when you're done, you're just like, all right, have fun, get to work, boys. And it's like you can see they're like, oh, I got a lot to absorb here.
Well, and sometimes what I've noticed too is that there's people that'll take notes and record.
Which I think is great.
What I've noticed when they're taking notes, they're not as into the discussion as much.
I think it's good for like having that, like, okay, it's 2 quarts of glyphosate, that kind of stuff where it's like easy
specific
notes.
food plots. Definitely.
It's like, do you want to listen back through an hour to find that one little nugget? Maybe not.
What I love is you have this person taking notes.
Yeah.
And then these 2 guys recording.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Or one recording, one
Yep.
taking notes. Because it seems like the one taking notes is out of the discussion a little bit for asking questions and getting more detail.
Or, hey, whoa, slow down, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And then, the drawing's always the same day. The recording's so critical. And really, I feel confident in this is I'm not saying there's not a better way when we go to a client. That we're not going to look at something and we determine it should have been a food plot. I mean, Dylan and I discuss this on the property debate, a healthy debate.
Healthy debate.
I want this to be a pass-through hunting plot. Dylan says, that this would be better just chainsaw travel corridor and put that through the back of the switchgrass right here. But those are same features. It's the same,
it's not different concepts. It's still, all within the same realm.
There's going to be things that it might have been better slightly to do something else. We're always trying to assess that balance based on going to 2,000 parcels. So that balance assessment is critical. Someone that's been to 50 parcels or goes to 15 a week or a year, they're going to have a really hard time assessing that accurately. But I look at it like if you don't find success, you literally didn't do the work that we recommended.
Right.
Because you will find a higher level of success. You will. And we're not just saying that it sounds overconfident, but we're making so many changes.
No, and that's again, I feel like this sounds like we're bragging a lot, but how fun is it in the fall when you get texts from guys that did the work and they're like, you're not gonna believe the bucks that I'm seeing, or they're sending you pictures of bucks that they shot or that they have encounters with. Right. And a little bit goes a long way. We talk about that where 20% of the work gets you 80% of the reward. So if you're hitting those big ticket items,
and that kind of goes back to the priority
Yeah.
People always want priority.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we talk about what starts? Well, you know,
Right.
if you change where your food is, you change how you access, and you maybe work
And
on your
those would be
bedding
the
a little
first
bit.
two priorities.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Often
food
before
and
bedding.
access. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Definitely
unfortunately,
before bedding.
the whitetail habitat industry in management, people focus so much on buck bedding and things like that, when that's usually the last thing.
Yeah.
If you do everything else right, you'll have bucks bedding.
Mm-hmm.
Doe bedding is more important than buck bedding. And
For sure.
if you do,
Depth
it's
of
all
cover.
this layered.
Yeah, this is all stuff we
so
talk about.
access and food sources are critical locations because food sources determine your access. Where you can access determines where your food sources can go.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the first two priorities. And a lot of times, if people switch those around, change your stands, protect that core area.
Yeah. Oh, you're almost there.
Yeah. And so outside of you having to bulldoze food plots
Yeah.
and do a lot of dirt work and expensive dirt work, that's why I love properties with fields and
where it's already kind of low-hanging fruit. Let's turn this into food. A little bit of switchgrass here. We're good.
Great screening,
Yep.
diversity already. But,
Yep.
that's kind of our day. And we wanted to explain this to you. And kind of the priorities that we look at for the day are priorities that you should take when you're looking at your property. Focus on the design first, not the stand location. I'll give you another example of that. Predominant wind. Someone will say, we got to have a lot of southwest wind stand locations. You worry about the proper setup, the proper access, the right funnel, the right line of deer, habitat improvements for that line of movement that you're trying to create. Then you look at the stand goes here. This is the wind I need to hunt that stand.
Right.
And if you design the property appropriately, you're always going to have a morning and afternoon stand location for a certain wind.
No matter what the wind's doing, you should have an option. I never want to sit out because I don't have the right setup.
You're always going to have an option.
Mm-hmm.
Always, if you design a property
Right.
correctly. It's one of the signs of a well-designed property, including morning and afternoon stands. You have to have them.
Sure.
There's got to be similar to the same number of morning stands to afternoon stands and a few in between.
Yep.
But more morning, more evening, and then 15%, 20% in between, something like that. So, Dylan, can you add anything to that?
Man, I don't know. It sounds overwhelming, but it is the most fun thing in the world. I feel like every day it's like, yes, it's a job. It feels like work, but it is so fun figuring these parcels out. And like, oh, I'm so glad that food plot fit there. I'm so glad that is dry, that we can do that food there. And holy cow, there's a perfect tree right there. Like, you get so satisfied with that. And it's like, there's so many times where I'm out there, I'm like, I'm jealous because like I would pay to sit in that tree on October 28th on a cold front.
That's the money stand right there.
For sure. Where it's like
that it's going to be successful and it can't help but be successful.
Yep.
And that's where like we put a lot of time and effort into these properties when we're there. We're there we look at those when you send us the information on your property. The worst thing we can get is a packet in the mail because we're literally going over that the night before or the morning of your visit. So that when we go to your property, we have it all in your head. We have your access, your cabin location, your food plots. They're in our head when we go there. So where if we're going over it a week ahead of time, we're just not doing that. We might typically, we're about the same number, about 70 clients, 70 days per year.
Yeah.
70 client days per year. Dylan and I've been to as many as 125. I don't want to go to that many anymore. 13 and 15 days out of the Lapeer Holiday Inn in Lapeer, Michigan. 13 out of 15 days. That was in COVID 2020.
Jeez.
That was my peak trip probably. Ridiculous. And then I did 10 clients in 11 days for years times 10 months every single year. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I'm limiting myself to, I think I'm right about that 65 or 70 this year.
Yeah, that's me.
I want to go fishing. I want to work on other stuff.
Yeah, we have other things to do. But I don't want to ever, I told Dylan this morning that unless I can't physically go to properties, I don't imagine why I wouldn't keep going to properties till the day I die. And it's because I love doing this stuff, love clients, love to teach, but I love to learn. And you can't teach, you can't make up these videos that we do unless you're on client properties and learning. And that's why going to that number that we go to is so critical and so important. Because if we didn't go to that number, we wouldn't
it stays
learn
fresh.
much.
Yeah.
I might go to more like 5 a month, though, times 7 months instead of like
that's pretty good, though.
70 times 10
You're still
months.
getting after it. Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
4 maybe, some 6 on a good month. I end up filling them in. This is how many I'm doing, Jesse, and then I add
But I've got
here,
these
add
guys
there.
that would fit perfect. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
here's
I'll add a
someone
couple
asking
more
you
days.
if you can go. That's why I left my May as my turkey hunting month and not scheduling a client trip, knowing full well that every week I'll be going to clients out of the house, which is how it turned out. So thank you guys for listening. I want you to take, this is what's worked really well for us, times a lot of clients that we go to. It's something that's a structure that I feel no one else has. No one has those type of concepts they manage by, that methodical, that we can absorb your property in that day and give you very accurate, definitive suggestions. But kind of take this and compare it to what you might be seeing out there. There's also those people, why would I ever want to hire a whitetail consultant to come on my land? Well, it's because they're going to be able to teach you things that you would never learn on your own. Never.
Yeah, and I think, that's one thing, to almost justify the cost is, it's not cheap to have us out, right? It's not. But I look at it like guys will go spend $5-6 grand to go hunt for 4 or 5 days in Kansas or Iowa or Missouri. If you put that kind of resource into your own property, you're basically going on a guided hunt every year.
And we're assuming you already own the property and you already spent a lot of money to get the property.
Yeah. So why not make it so that it's
it's not a necessity, that property. So
Right.
it's something that you could have on the side. But yeah, it's something we greatly enjoy doing. And I'll even say we're mindful enough of how you can purchase property, land contracts. It's not that we're especially real estate agent or something like that, but I can even mention on a client that I had in Ohio a couple weeks ago. They were talking about, we have permission from this person to access this corner. And I'm like, oh, man, that corner is like, it's really important to your property. And they understood that. And we talked about access and everything. And I said, if you ever considered a legal easement, just get it 16 feet wide, 16 and a half feet wide, along that border. One of them could give it to you, buy it if you have to. And they're like, that's a good idea. And the one person that was with them, the aunt owned it, and they're actually signing for that legal easement today.
That's so cool.
And like for him, he's like, this was worth having you come out, let alone everything else. I'm hoping it was worth more, everything else too. But bottom line is we try to really help you out no matter what we can, where you want to put your cabin someday, your pole building, and your future home, cabin, whatever.
Love that too. Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of the snapshot of a day.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into it. And I hope that we can go out to your property someday. If not, we talk about all these concepts. We don't hold anything back. And bottom line is we want to learn, we want to teach, and we're never going to stop doing that.
Yep.
If you never give us a dime, that's okay.
You keep talking, I'll keep editing.
Sounds good. Let's go.